Hi, welcome to another episode of the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm Steve Richardson, a bankruptcy attorney trying to keep people on their path to financial stability and independence through education. Now, there's a difference between having a side hustle that you enjoy, one that makes you a few extra dollars every month, and running an actual business after quitting your day job. There's a lot to think about and plan for that many miss, which is why most businesses fail. That's why in this episode of the podcast, I talked to attorney Soroya Garner about the steps you need to take to get the best possible start for your business. We discuss everything from the proper way to form it to how to protect your brand. Well, my guest today is Soroya Gardner, an attorney, speaker, and coach who helps small business owners ensure that their intellectual property is protected so that it has a lasting legacy and creates generational wealth. She works with creative entrepreneurs across the country with securing trademarks, copyrights, business entity formations, and contracts. Always on one to give back, Soroya regularly shares her time with the community by leading free workshops centered around entrepreneurs and business ownership. Welcome to the show, Soroya.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking about before I hit record, there are a lot of folks out there. They have um, they might have an idea. They might have a side hustle that's making them some money, not a lot, but
Mhm.
it's supplemental income. Or they have an idea for a business. And I guess the first question I have for you is if somebody's thinking about that or they have a side hustle and they want us to take that next step and turn that side hustle into a business and
Mhm.
essentially quit their day job. Uh, what are some of the key factors that someone like this should consider before doing that, before taking the plunge?
Yeah, that's a very great question. And my response to that, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, is not going to be a wholly focused on like legal considerations, but more from a practical standpoint, what someone should consider before they decide to launch out and depart from their 9 to 5 and start their business full time. Really want to identify your why factor. And
Hmm.
that's a very practical answer, but it is extremely important, especially in business ownership or entrepreneurship. You really want to identify why it is that you want to be in business for yourself full time, because entrepreneurship is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart, and there are going to be hurdles, there's going to be setbacks that you're going to have to overcome. And in those challenging moments, the thing that's going to keep you going, that's going to keep you propelling forward, is remembering your why. Whether it's to spend more time with your children or your spouse, or to just experience financial freedom, or simply to find joy in the everyday work that you do. That is so important, and to not be mistaken and get caught up in the glamorization of entrepreneurship, especially with social media nowadays. We make it seem like it's glitz and glam every day in business ownership, and that is so far from the truth. So, number one would be to understand your why factor. But in addition to that, I would also um, like to say that one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs and small business owners face today is funding. And even more so for minority business owners. That is a huge challenge that business owners face. And so before you make that leap into your 9 to 5, I would really take advantage of the day job that you have and let that be the funding source for your side hustle, so that you can go full time with your side hustle and really have some financial means to work with. So don't be so anxious to depart from your day job. Really use that to your advantage. And then also, I would make sure that you really do some self reflection and ensure that you do have that perseverance, that self discipline, because as a full time entrepreneur, you don't have a supervisor that's checking in to make sure you've got those daily tasks completed or whatever milestones it is that you're supposed to be doing. You're going to have that discipline in order to make sure that you're putting in the work to be successful as a full-time entrepreneur. So just from a practical standpoint, that is what I would say someone should consider before taking that leap.
Oh, absolutely. As you and I both know from running a business, it's you're the boss. There's no 9 to 5. There's
Yeah.
no, oh, well, it's 5 o'clock, time to go home. Not
No,
necessarily.
no.
The work still has to get done. And folks, Soroya is right when she talks about finding your why, and also in using your day job as a source of funding. You have uh, don't quit your day job until you have a war chest built up. You should have several months worth of monthly expenses set aside, because you're probably not going to be profitable right away, unless you've been doing the side hustle for a while and you do have a regular source of revenue coming in. So you're going to need that extra money set aside. But you also have to be realistic about what being a business owner involves, more on the meta level, but also to be strategic. And you mentioned a business plan, Soroya. Is there anything in particular you recommend people uh, put into their business plan to ensure at least initial success?
Well, I think just to make sure really that whatever service or product that you're going to be offering actually adds value. Is there a need for it? Are you solving a problem? That is the heart of business ownership and entrepreneurship. You are solving problems for other people. And if your plan does not address that, then I would say that's where we need to start. Make sure that whatever product or service that you're going to offer, that it's adding value.
Mhm. Is there a market for either your product or your service? Is this something that people will buy? And also, is this something that people will buy at the price point you need to charge in order to be profitable? So that definitely knowing your market and doing some market research to start. Who are your competitors? What are they doing? And get an idea. Don't do exactly the same thing they do, because that won't set you apart or make you different than they are, and you need to differentiate yourself. But certainly find out, is there a market? Is there a problem that you're solving with your product or service? And are people willing to pay what you need to charge? No question there.
Absolutely. So important.
So, all right. So we've got a side hustle. The person has defined what their product or service is. They determined there's a need for it in their market area, and that in looking at the market, what other people are charging seems to be comparable with what they need to charge, and they're ready to take that next step. Uh, Now they have to make a decision when they form the business. What form should it take? Should it just be a sole proprietorship? Is it just going to be you? Are you going in with other friends or family members? Is this going to be something you and your wife do, you and your spouse do, you and a sibling, something like that? Do you want to be a sole proprietorship? Do you want to be a corporation, a small business version called Subchapter S? Do you want to be a limited liability company? And you have to make that decision. And what kind of things enter into that decision, Soroya, when you talk to people about what entity to form? What are some of the questions you ask and some of the things they need to consider?
For sure. Yeah, that's a very important consideration, as well as determining what is going to be your legal structure for your business.
Mhm.
And so I really encourage clients that come to me to sit back and really do some due diligence to understand what your options are from the beginning. Again, social media, the internet is so prevalent all of our lives, and we hear lots of talk about LLCs, and LLCs are wonderful, but we need to be aware of what our other options are so you can make an informed decision about what is going to suit your business and the goals of your business best. So some considerations that I like to throw out there and pose to my clients is thinking about the formalities. What are the legal formalities that are required for the business structure that you're selecting? Do you have to file with your Secretary of State, or are there any records that you have to file? Or are there any corporate meeting minutes that need to be taken into consideration? So that may vary depending on your state, depending on the structure that you actually end up going with. So formalities is really important. Also, we have to think about the personal liability that you may be subjected to. So, is your industry high risk? If it is, then you need to ensure that you're selecting a limited liability company or a corporation. You need to choose a structure that is going to provide you that limited liability protection. So if you're in a high risk industry, there's no way in the world that you should be selecting a sole proprietorship. And so these are some things to take into consideration before moving forward. Also, we want to think about tax treatment. How are you going to be taxed? Is it going to be pass through taxation? Is it double tax? We need to know that, right? And so these are important legal considerations, tax considerations that we have to think about before just jumping out there and filing something with your Secretary of State. Um, but also, another very important consideration is the management of your business. Is it just you? Do you have a business partner? Do you have multiple business partners? That's really going to also help you make a determination about the structure of your business, right?
Mhm.
And then ultimately, just thinking about the advantages and the disadvantages of each structure. And then once you have all those things in mind, then from there, you should be able to make a well-informed decision about the entity that's going to suit you best.
Yeah. Well, no question. And in looking at that too, the tax considerations, you should talk to either a tax attorney or an accountant, and have an accountant to help you with that. But things like, if it's going to be just you, an LLC, at least federally, the IRS doesn't recognize a single member LLC as a taxable entity. You're either taxed as a regular corporation or as a sole proprietorship. So that may not be the best position to be in from a tax standpoint. So you might not want to choose LLC. But there are other advantages to an LLC as far as a pass-through tax entity. Some states, like New Jersey, don't necessarily recognize small business pass-through tax entities. I sit here in New Jersey. We have a corporate tax. I'm a professional corporation, which is a particular type of subchapter S or small business corporation, but I still have to pay separate corporate tax because of that. And I
Yeah.
don't have a law partner or anybody else that could be in an LLC with me. I could avoid that additional tax layer by being in an LLC. So those are things to consider. Now, there's also, people hear about partnerships. Are partnerships really a thing anymore? Do businesses and business owners and entrepreneurs still form partnerships?
In my personal practice, I really don't come across personal partnerships really that often. And so while that option exists in many states, I don't see a lot of people going that route.
Mhm.
And really, again, it really comes down to these considerations that we're talking about. And once you take it all into consideration, that may not be the most advantageous to you. So that's a great question. And honestly, I don't see much of partnerships.
And probably because of with the advent of limited liability companies,
Exactly.
partnerships have really kind of faded away because they don't provide that shield you talked about earlier. That
Exactly.
shield from risk. There's, creditors can come after you individually. And there are stories of people who one partner, is a bad apple and does some bad things. And as a result, the business suffers and the other partners suffer individually because they're jointly responsible for all debts and liabilities of the business. and don't have that shield. So
Right.
personally, as an attorney, I really encourage people not to go the route of partnership because there's so many other better options than that.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
All right, so they're going to form that business. They have their business plan. They know their market. They filed all the appropriate paperwork to create the business entity that they've chosen to be, assuming it's something other than a sole proprietorship. Um, but no business is truly formed until all the paperwork's done. Are there any contracts or agreements that the business owner should have in place to increase their chances of success?
Yeah, for sure. So, besides filing your incorporation documents with your state, contracts are another huge piece of ensuring the success of your business, especially if you're just starting up. So, I
Mhm.
would highly recommend, and in some states, it's even required, but that you have an operating agreement. And if it's not required in your state, I would still highly encourage you to draft up an operating agreement, regardless if you are a single member LLC or if you're a corporation, right? You want to
Mhm.
have an operating agreement in place. And what this agreement is it's essentially the blueprint for your business. It is going to spell out the ownership of the business, the interests, the rights, the duties of everyone involved in the business. And it just gives you a clear outline of what to expect, what the relationship is going to look like. And even in the case of unfortunate circumstances, if the business has to dissolve, it's going to spell out what that is going to look like as well. So, how do we dissolve the business? So, these are important considerations that you want to spell out before you get too deep into the operations of your business. Draw up the outlines and be clear about the relationship and the expectations of how the business is to operate.
Mhm.
So that's one very important contract that I would highly encourage everyone to have handy. In addition to that, I would also say, especially in today's world where it seems like we are becoming more and more litigious, I would encourage a client service agreement as well. And so this is going to pretty much relationship between your business and your client. So it's
Mhm.
going to talk about what are the deliverables if you're a service-based or even maybe a product-based company. What are the deliverables expected? What is the payment terms to look like? How are you to be paid? When are you to be paid? Refunds, right? Are refunds accepted? What is your refund policy?
Mhm.
Ownership of intellectual property. So it's really important to, again, lay that foundation in the parameters or boundaries of what that working relationship looks like between you and your client. And really, some entrepreneurs and business owners, they kind of shy away from contracts because they can seem intimidating, or maybe we don't understand the terms, or maybe we don't even know what to put in the contract. I would highly encourage, if you are not someone that is comfortable with that, to make sure that you have the right people on your team. So hire on a business attorney that can help you with drafting those contracts, because it's really going to save you and prevent heartache and headache down the line in case those relationships with your clients go south.
Mhm.
So those are just two very key contracts that I would encourage everyone to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And these contracts and agreements can take different forms or contain different things depending on the type of business you have. For example, here in New Jersey, we have a Consumer Fraud Act and a Home Improvement Act. So any company that is classified as a home improvement contractor needs to follow certain guidelines and know what they're doing. And that means also there has to be a written contract, and that contract has certain terms it has to have in it. And if you don't have one of those terms in that contract, you get sued. It's
Yeah.
considered consumer fraud not to have one of those provisions in there. So not only talk to a business attorney as far as these contracts are concerned, but maybe somebody familiar with the laws surrounding the business you have, the product you're selling, the services you're rendering, to make sure that the right content is in that contract as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's going to be pertinent for any service provider, professional service provider you're working with, whether it's your attorney or your CPA. You want to make sure that they are well versed in your particular industry so that they can catch those gaps, right? That
Mhm.
may end up being a liability to you later down the line. So that's very important. Absolutely.
And if we've all seen these, click here to accept the user agreement and things like that, and you pretty much don't have a choice. Uh, but if you're selling online, you're selling a product, things like that, it's important to require them to check that box so they purchase it and there's a problem. There's at least something to help you. Now, it's not a negotiated contract, so if the language is a little fuzzy or something is not contained, it could still come back to bite you. So you want to make sure, again, talk to someone knowledgeable to make sure all the right things are in that agreement, but just make sure as well, have someone check that box before they purchase your goods or your services.
Yeah, that's so important. Absolutely.
All right. So we've gotten to this point now. Also, insurance, right? You have that limited liability of from creditors and things like that, the shield of an LLC or a subchapter S corporation. But things can still go wrong. You can still have problems, and you're going to need the right insurance. And it
Oh,
might
yeah.
not always occur to someone what kind of insurance they need. So, what do you recommend to people as far as insurance is concerned?
Yeah, just like we were talking about having a CPA, a bookkeeper, an accountant, you also want to make sure that you have an insurance professional that can recommend the proper products that you should be investing in to limit that liability in your business, right? You
Mhm,
may just need general liability, but you also might want to consider key man policies or errors in omission, right? If you're a professional service provider, these are
mhm,
so important and you may not know the right questions to ask. And so you
mhm.
want to have a trusted advisor, an insurance professional that can help you navigate and identify what protections you need to have in your business for
Mhm.
sure.
And sometimes it doesn't even occur to you. I mean, there's also workers' compensation insurance. If you have any
Yeah.
employees in New Jersey, it's actually a crime not to have workers' compensation insurance. I mean, knowingly not having it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So you really, I mean, and you may not think, oh, I'm not, construction or a high risk job where somebody might get injured while working for me. They sit at a desk all day. Even so, they trip over something going down to the water cooler or fall down a flight of stairs coming home, going home. Or if they do something and are injured while at work, and
Hmm.
they're going to want disability payments, payment for medical insurance, depending upon your state, as far as
Right.
what your rights are. So you don't want to go without that. You want to look into that.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
So, all right, so we have our accountant, we have our insurance, we have our business attorney for making sure we have all the right language in our contracts and have all the right contracts. And we're going good and we're going okay, but we want to grow, right? We want to make more. We want to get bigger than we are now. But then again, that depends upon what your why is. If you don't want it to be any bigger than you are, you don't want to grow it into something that has lots of employees.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you want some growth and increase in revenue for a good future. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that you talk to people about as far as um, growth is concerned, what they can do, ways to people can leverage and monetize their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most efficient and effective ways of realizing growth in your business is taking advantage of your intellectual property, right?
Mhm,
And as an IP yeah, of course, that's the conversation I have with my clients, and realizing that IP is truly one of the greatest assets for most business owners. But unfortunately, we don't realize that. And
mhm,
so it's my job to help my clients tap into the value and the potential of their intellectual property. And so, especially in today's age, in this digital world that we live in, there's so many opportunities to leverage your IP and to realize that growth in your business. But with that, it's important to first, before we talk about leveraging IP, is to have ownership of it as well. But once you've obtained the ownership of your intellectual property, you can then begin having discussions regarding maybe licensing. Maybe you have a training program or a software that you've developed.
Mhm.
Licensing is a great way, and franchising as well, to grow your business and to recognize additional streams of income.
Mhm.
So there's a whole lot of opportunity there, but there's so many ways to grow your business, but that's one of the key strategies that I recommend to clients, is tapping in to the potential of their IP and really leveraging that. And there's so many ways that you can do that, whether it's licensing, whether you create a course, whether you sell ebooks, or whatever the case may be. That's an additional way to recognize that growth in your business financially.
Well, certainly licensing has gotten big. I mean, the story. I mean, Bill Gates got to be where he was not because he sold um, an operating system to IBM for their computers.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't sell it. He licensed it.
Right. Yeah.
And IBM back then was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And I don't know that they necessarily thought it through,
Right.
but the guy made a mint because he licenses it. You sell it. That's it. You've made your money.
Yeah.
You license it. Now you have a regular stream of income over time, and the
Mm-hmm.
more licensees you have, the more long-term uh, income. We're seeing this
Absolutely.
with software.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a software developer, you have to decide: are you going to sell it, or are you going to have a subscription model, which
Right.
has um, an ongoing stream of revenue for you? But not, I mean,
Absolutely.
if you've got a small construction business or you're a plumber or things like that, are there some? I would think that some businesses more than others need to protect intellectual property. What uh, are there some businesses that don't need to worry about it as much? How do you um, determine that when taught? How does the listener determine whether they really should be looking into protecting their IP?
And honestly, I think that's one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have.
Hmm.
Protection is one thing, but everyone should be considering intellectual property
Hmm.
at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. And I
Hmm.
say that because as an advisor, I want to help you to limit liability as much as possible. So even the startup should be considering IP protections, right? That's a conversation that needs to be had before you even formalize your business with your state. And if you don't, there are legal ramifications that can come about. So, for instance, when you go to file your business with the state, you conduct a name availability search, right? Right. But that database is only searching for businesses that are registered within your state that you're going to be operating in or forming your business in. And so that really doesn't give you a reliable idea of whether your name is legally available for you to use.
Hmm.
So the danger of starting your business without considering IP is that you could register your business using a name that's already been established and secured by someone in a totally different state. And now you've started this business overstepping someone else's already established IP rights. And
Hmm.
now you're starting out your business looking at liability already.
Hmm.
Because if that company that has already established those rights finds out that you're using their business name without authorized use, they could rightfully send you a cease and desist letter. And now you're looking at possibly being forced to rebrand your entire business. And
Hmm.
that can become very, very costly. So, IP really isn't like an afterthought. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of business owners treat it, but it's really a priority that needs to be taken into consideration before even officially forming your business, because we want to limit liability as much as possible. And if we skip that step, then we're opening the door to liability. Simple as that. But furthermore, you did mention that, IP could be more relevant for specific industries. And while all business owners should be considering IP protections, it could be more beneficial or advantageous to particular industries. Like if you are in the tech industry, right?
Mhm.
You definitely want to ensure that you have your trademarks, your patents, your copyright registrations to ensure that your software, the apps that you're developing are protected. So that is a field where it's absolutely going to be imperative that you have your IP secured. So that's a wonderful question, and I hope that sheds some light into the importance of IP
Mhm.
protection for all businesses.
If for no other reason than the name of your business, because you're building a brand around that. And if you're
Exactly.
built, like I said, if it's somebody else's and you haven't properly protected it, you may have to start all over again. Uh,
Exactly.
there's a for the listeners out there that are fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's a television show called She-Hulk, about one of the superheroes, She-Hulk, and she called herself She-Hulk and was known in the a social media and fashion influencer trademarked She-Hulk and sent her a cease and desist letter.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
She-Hulk in real life is a lawyer, so it was particularly embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
And she had a whole legal battle, which she ultimately won. But having to fight over who the real She-Hulk was, because it never
Exactly.
occurred to her
Mhm.
to trademark it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a superhero, why would you? But it sort of goes to the absurd a little bit, but it still makes the point that if you're branding under something, you don't want somebody else using the same thing, and they may not take send you a cease and desist letter, but they may use the same thing and maybe start cutting into your brand. And
Exactly.
if you're not trademarked, how do you stop them?
Exactly.
But if you are trademarked, at least you have a weapon that you can use to protect yourself.
For sure, and that is so very important. There's so many benefits and reasons should consider trademark protection. I could be on here all day talking about that. But the potential of lost revenue, diverted revenue, consumer confusion, that is detrimental when you are trying to establish your brand in the marketplace. And
Mhm,
being able to have that legal recourse to back you in
mhm,
the event that someone does overstep your rights is, oh my gosh, it is so helpful,
mhm,
right? You don't want to be operating, especially in today's world, and not have that protection in the event that someone does overstep your rights. So, yeah. And also, I mean, IP protections, trademark registration, that is long-term value as a growing business. And if your plans for your business is to expand, right, and you don't want it just to be mom and pop, just you, it's very important to consider IP trademark protection because as long as you use your trademark, you won't lose it. So it can be passed down for generations and it does increase the overall value of your business. So
mhm.
that's very important as we continue conversations about your business strategy and succession planning, right? All of those things come into consideration. And so it really is beneficial on a number of levels.
Well, you're obviously an IP attorney and do a lot of work with intellectual property and trademarks and patents and things like that. Are you a patent attorney, or I know that's a special licensing?
It is a special licensing. So no, I am not a patent attorney. You do have to have a technical science background and pass an additional bar. So no,
Mhm.
I'm not a patent attorney. So can't help you there. But anything copyright, trademark, trade secrets, I've got you.
Well, let's talk about what you do a little bit. On your website, you talk about an empire protection plan. Now, I'm sure our listeners and when they want to start a small business, that well, I'm not trying to build an empire here. What I know that's a catchy name, and I'm sure you've trademarked it. But what does that do if somebody was interested in saying, I'm not necessarily building an empire? What does that do for folks? How does that help entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So first of all, my firm, we really do focus on serving that entrepreneur, that business owner who does have plans to grow and to create generational wealth and to make impact in their community. And
Mm-hmm.
so that name, Empire Protection Plan, resonates with that particular ideal client. But even if that's not your plan, right? What this Empire Protection Call does is we are able to sit back and identify any gaps that exist in your business that could present liability to you. So we want to address those threats and come up with a strategy on how to remedy that and how to build the protections around your business so that you are set up for long-term success. So we identify whether or not you have the proper structure, the legal structure for your business. Are you in compliance as far as keeping up with whether it's annual or biannual business reports that need to be filed with your Secretary of State? There's so many business owners that forget about this and they'll let their business be administratively dissolved. And now you're sitting with full liability looking at you in the face. And so we definitely address gaps such as that. We talk about different contracts that you might need to have handy in your toolkit and don't. And then also what intellectual property threats are facing your business. And so that is what our protection plan call involves. And we really take a deep dive into making sure that you have the full legal protections to make sure that you're set up to be successful.
Well, it sounds like it's a branded package of really all the things we've talked about today, right?
Yeah,
From
it is.
having the right business entity, filing the right paperwork, having the right contracts, all of that. This is sort of your umbrella plan, whether you're building an empire or just building a business. Uh,
Right.
I think the empire thing goes more to what you talk about in generational wealth. Is this something that is this a family business? Is this going to be, you know, Garner and Sons or something,
Yeah,
Richardson, where you're looking to pass that down, where you do have sort of that legacy or that empire, but
exactly.
really don't let the empire word, folks, dissuade you. It's more just sort of a big picture look at everything you need to do to make sure that you're checking all the boxes and starting and running your business, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
And you made a good point too. I mean, we talked about these a limited liability company or a corporation has that shield from creditors, has that ability to protect you. But if you don't fill that form out every year and pay the money to the
Oh, yeah.
state, you can lose it, not even realize it, and suddenly you're
Exactly.
being sued, and they looked it up and found out that your business entity has lapsed, and they sue you personally, and that's
Oh,
not
yeah.
the surprise you want to have.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So we definitely work with our clients to help avoid that for sure.
So finally, I wanted to talk to you. You have a new book coming out, right? The Legacy Blueprint. Tell us about that. If folks read that book, what can they expect to get out of it?
Yeah, so it's a workbook actually, and I really encourage clients and potential clients not to just obtain new information that can be beneficial to them, but to implement it. And
Mhm.
so this workbook really encourages the readers to gain knowledge that will help them in their business, but to take action on it. And so it really covers the areas that we spoke about today, and we encourage you to do that due diligence and identify which entity is going to be best suited for you based on some of the considerations that we just covered.
Mhm.
And also encourages you to look at contracts. What terms need to be in that contract? How do you properly sign a contract as a business owner to limit that personal liability? So it covers great information like that. We go over some intellectual property information, understanding what IP really is, and on a practical sense, what does that look like in your particular business?
Mhm.
Everyone has IP in their business. We just need to identify what that actually looks like and then
Mhm.
how to protect it and leverage it from there. And then just additional resources resources that are helpful to business owners, such as estate planning, right? Do you have the proper plan in place in case something were to happen to you as a business owner? So these are important considerations that need to
Mhm.
be talked about. And then just helpful resources for funding and tools that efficiency and workflow. But it really encourages the business owner to take action. And I also wrote it just to provide legal access, affordable legal access and resources to that startup business owner that may not have the budget for legal guidance and protection. So at least they can grab this workbook and be informed to some degree.
So your law firm is in Indiana, right?
Yes,
And
in the end.
yeah,
Mhm.
so but because of the animal the law is, I mean, you could help really anyone with the intellectual property issues because copyright and trademark and that sort of thing is federal law. But as we've talked about throughout our discussions, different states can have different laws. So
Right.
things that you can help people with, but there are things that they still would have to find a local attorney to talk to or an attorney within their state if they're not in Indiana, right?
Correct. That is very true. Absolutely. So, our firm is definitely here to serve intellectual property across the country because that
Mhm.
is federal based. But if you needed assistance with business formation or contracts, then yes, you would have to find an attorney that's local to your area.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you for more information, to talk to you about your empire protection plan, or to get your book when it comes, when's your book come out?
So it is actually already out. So it's definitely available for you to grab. You can visit our website at sgarnerlaw.com, or you can follow us on social media at Soroya the Lawyer.
Okay, and I'll have those folks. I'll have those links and information in the show notes for this episode. So be sure to go there and get that information. But thanks for coming on the show, Soroya. And I'm sure I've learned a few things, and I'm sure our listeners who are looking into maybe starting a business or have a business sort of open their eyes to some things that they hadn't considered before, and things that they really need to do if they want to protect their business and protect their financial freedom. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for having me. I appreciate it.